Okay. Okay. Hi, I'm Elliot Fishman, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to our Facebook Live. Many of you know that for the last 6 years, I've done a speaker series at Hopkins where we've had leading experts across the world in different areas, ranging from someone like Ed Catmull from Pixar to Jensen Wang from NVIDIA to Reed Jobs from Emerson, uh, on and on. We've had about 46 speakers. And now, of course, we can't do the speaker series, and all of those speakers, the articles are written in JACRs. So what I decided to do in the interim, while we can't physically get together like we typically do once a month, would be to interview people and then write the article. Now, in saying that, I thought perhaps not just interview people where it's one-on-one, but we would be able to let you, our CTisus audience, also listen directly to the speaker, and then we will expand that and we'll write the article for JACR and hopefully it'll get accepted. So one of the things in the COVID-19 epidemic that we're all dealing with on a daily basis is really the fact that at some point COVID-19 will be gone or at least controlled. But I think with many things, just like 9/11, if you can compare it to that, many things change during the immediate crisis and then go back to what was. But many things do not change. I mean, do not go back to the way they were. And that's a major impact on medicine. And you'll see, we'll talk about a little bit this after, things like telemedicine, which many people resisted, now is mainstream. Amazon deliveries, many people never did a thing like that. Now everyone's doing it. So Whitney Fishman Zember, is an expert on trends and technologies and had given a talk I heard, which is what's going to happen, what's going to stick with us, and what's going to significantly not change. So I thought it's a really good time to think about it because as we're going through the crisis, it's also really good to look at the rainbow, look at what's going to happen as we get through the crisis and get to the other end, which may take a while, but it's something good to think about. So it's a real pleasure to introduce Whitney, and she's going to give us her experience, and then you can ask questions. I know it's a little different time for many of you. We typically do our Facebook Live at 12 o'clock, but this is the time that she gave me available. And so we'll do it at 10 o'clock. It'll be on Facebook Live, so if you don't see it, you can see it again later. It'll be on Instagram. You can ask questions now, and we'll try to answer them, or you can ask questions later. So without any further ado, from our studios in Pikesville, Maryland, here's Whitney.
Thank you, Dr. Fishman. So my name is Whitney, and I run innovation consumer technology for a media marketing company. My job essentially is to help brands ranging from beauty brands to travel brands to dairy products, essentially, figure out what are the emerging consumer behaviors and the emerging technologies that they can tap into, and how do you apply that to general marketing. But if you take a step back from it, my job really is helping people make better decisions because they're informed, educated, and recognize the challenges at hand. So as Dr. Fishman mentioned, we have a pandemic going on. A lot of the behaviors that you yourself have experienced, gone through, iterated, implemented within your homes and your personal lives, it's incredibly expedited, incredibly quick, and changing day to day, week by week, based on WHO advice, based on what's going on in the world, what's going on in your local cities and towns. So as a marketer, there's a few things that we need to figure out, right? What are the immediate reactions and how do you support people right now, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. What are the longer term ramifications of behaviors? And then even longer term, beyond 3 to 6 months, what are the behaviors that are going to stick first stay? So I want to kind of start off looking at a top level, right? So forget consumer behavior because we are going to get to that as that drives everything. A lot of people are panicking from a business and industry perspective in terms of COVID changing everything. The truth is, when it comes to a lot of larger trends, it's not that COVID has changed them, it's expedited them. So there's a few things that we've seen that already were on trend for growth in 2020 as well as 2021 to 2022 that COVID will push expedition of. So one thing is robotics, right? So if you think of robotics, automation, substituting human touch, we've started to see that right on the back end of systems, leveraging AI to replace the need for humans, whether it's customer service, whether it's diagnostics. You already saw that with a remote workforce, an increasingly remote workforce, and offices closed, question marks around what the office of the future will look like. Will it be staggered employees? Will it be truncated work hours due to commuting? Will it be less people in a physical space at once by government mandate? Whatever that is, you're going to have an increasingly remote workforce, which means there's a larger opportunity for robotics, automation, and streamlining to take place much faster than previously predicted. So any prediction numbers that you've seen previously are out the window. Things like e-commerce, right? Going online to buy things is not a novel idea. But what you're seeing is an increase of things that you may have waited to go do in person are going rapidly online faster than before. And you're going to Amazon, you're going to online platforms, not only for your everyday essentials, but every single toy and nuance and thing that you may need, frankly, because the stores are closed, or you don't feel safe going to a store, you don't feel comfortable going to a store. And even those who pushed back on e-commerce, especially boomers and older seniors, because they don't want to go to the grocery store, they don't want to deal with crowds, they don't feel comfortable in large spaces. You're seeing holdouts and people who did not want to buy into the notion of online shopping being forced to. And that's going to have ramifications on things like the production line, purchasing methods, what stores are doing. You're also going to see ramifications of purchasing. We've already seen retail revolution. If you ever have been in a store, if you've been to a mall in the last year, you know a lot of it is closed, right? There's a lot of changes going on in retail, and we're continuously seeing that. One of the trends that we've been seeing that also we've been replicating in any sort of office space is this notion of experiential. So you can't just have a store with stuff in it anymore. There needs to be an experiential component. You're seeing that with engaging technology. Even if you go to a local Target, at the end, when you see all of those different things for you to grab, everything's become more experiential and engaging. And, the new crop of retailers have come up. Everything tells a story and it's engaging. And we've taken some of those ideas, and I know it's something that a lot of hospitals are bringing in terms of how do you go beyond just the transactional into experiential? How do you find that experiential and those changes continue to proliferate online in terms of customer service, in terms of, engagement, in terms of the actual model of how do you treat consumers? You're seeing that just rapidly grow because right now stores are closed, right? So how do you bring a bit of the offline experience online? And you'll continue to see that because we don't know what the future will bring. Things like telemedicine, right? Telemedicine, telediagnostics for anything from the minor to the major. It was always an interesting concept, and you saw companies like One Medical start to implement it into their apps, into their systems. But it was always a nice to have versus a need to have. But right now when hospitals are telling you to not come to the hospital, do not go to the doctor unless it's a dire emergency, it completely changes the notion of what happened. We had a family friend who the child bumped their head and needed stitches, right? And they could not go to the hospital, but they were able to leverage telemedicine to meet with a doctor, virtually diagnose, and then find a place that could take them privately. So you're starting to see these things that were nice to haves become must haves. And the reality is these are larger industry trends that can be applied anything from beauty to pharma to medicine. But you'll start to see these things. These were things that we were already talking about. So it's not that COVID came in and disrupted things. It's expediting a lot of things. Now, the question really becomes, the thing that fascinates me most is 6 months from now, we don't know what life is going to look like in terms of the way that you learn, commute, engage, work. If your children are going to be in a physical school, you're going to continue to be the homeschool teachers. If you're going to be going back to work, or you're going to continue for a remote workforce, what the economy is going to look like, what transportation will look like, what city infrastructure will look like. There's a lot of question marks, and obviously that depends on where you are in the country or the world, what type of job that you work, what age your children are, whether you are single or in a family unit, if you live in a home or an apartment or a condo, if you're in a suburb or a city. There's a lot of things going on here. But the thing that really fascinates me that we're trying to understand better is what behaviors are consumers scabs in that, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, we're going to look back and say, oh my God, wasn't it crazy when we had to wear masks and gloves and wipe down our Amazon packages and individually wipe down our grocery boxes, and I was using a Lysol wipe to wipe my Lysol wipes. That was crazy. And what's going to be a longer term scar? What are the behaviors that you will never go back to not doing? It's not just making sure you wash your hands when you come in the house. It's, masks. It's, the way that you engage with the world around you. And what those consumer scabs and scars eventually will be will have a lot of implications for the world around you, for businesses, for work, as well as the health field. An easy example is touchscreens, right? So if you remember any conversations you had with Dr. Fishman around CES and what we're seeing with consumer technology, increasingly what we've been seeing is touchscreens. things like your smartphones, but plugged into everything from the subway stations to where you check in a patient. Everything is going to touchscreen, right? It's easy. There's something about the power of touch for consumers. It saves time, it saves efficiency, but there's touchscreens have just been integrated into everything from your refrigerator in your home to your phones to your cars to, any component of the hospital. We are now living in a germaphobe world. So what happens when you're in a touchscreen world and you're afraid to touch everything, right? So trends like that, you're going to see a bit of a shift. So you're going to probably most likely see an increase in biometrics. You're going to see an increase of scanning. You're going to see an increase of voice. If you think about it, if a consumer shows up to the hospital or a patient shows up to the hospital into your office, they're wearing masks and gloves, right? A touchscreen may not work, but they may not feel comfortable using a touchscreen because it's too many surfaces of other people, and you may not be cleaning it. So you may see an increase in voice, right? Even though you're wearing a mask, we've seen, I think, a 25% plus increase in a lot of consumer-driven apps in the home, whether it's through a Google Assistant, whether it's through Amazon Alexa. So you're going to see an increase in engagement points like voice. You'll see that for retailers. You'll see it for entertainment in the home, playing games, playing music through Spotify. You're also going to increasingly see that as an offering within the hospital framework or within offices, because if you don't want consumers touching things, there's something about voice that's not only soothing and a bit more on the EQ side of things, but also you're just going to see this general notion of, I don't want to touch anything, but I want to translate. So you'll see a lot of voice integrated in telehealth apps. You're going to see a lot of voice integrated into general e-com apps as well. There's a lot of things that we're seeing brands do in terms of experience and planning for the future, right? So if you think of Scabs versus scars, what's your behavior going to be when you're allowed outside your home, right? And that has to do a lot with content and conversation. So a great example is Airbnb. Airbnb is a home rental platform. A lot of people right now in the short term are renting homes to get out of hotspot areas throughout the country and throughout the world and decamping their cities, different cities. But net Airbnb are for those who want to travel. If you can't nor feel comfortable traveling, how does a brand like Airbnb deliver? So what they've done is they've recognized that a major component of traveling is wanderlust and this notion of exploring and trying something new. So they've pivoted to offer online experiences. So if you go to Airbnb, there's an entire virtual events area where you can register for events of how to learn how to meditate using the cello, how to do yoga on a goat farm. And you can actually partake in these virtual activities facilitated by Airbnb that taps into their brand positioning of wanderlust and travel and trying new things, all through the safety of your home and through your computer. You're seeing that increasingly across other brands who are preparing for what the future may be. Again, we don't know what's going to scab and what's going to scar when it comes to consumer behavior, but the last few weeks have been really about taking a pause and supporting the frontline workers, amplifying WHO advice. We're seeing a lot of brands doing things where they're helping push WHO advice. We're seeing a lot of brands pivot entire factories from producing perfume and cologne to producing hand sanitizer and PPE equipment. And then you're seeing a lot of brands who are just generally supporting the front lines at home, right? Where you have families and the need for safety and high-risk individuals and high-risk businesses. But it's not just about that short term, getting to the front lines. It's what's the longer term end game for brands and what's the longer term end game for consumer behavior. We don't know that yet, but starting to think about the behaviors that even you have seen in your own family and amongst your colleagues, which of those could potentially stick versus sort of ephemerally go away as things change is very important when thinking about the customer experience and the consumer experience. Again, if things like touch go away, all the touch screens that you've invested in, it won't help you. Should you be looking into voice solutions? Should you be looking into biometric solutions? I mean, you're going to see it work with technology, right? If you have an iPhone right now, you most likely use the feature where you hold the phone up to your face to unlock your phone. What happens if you're wearing a mask, right? The camera doesn't pick that up. So you're going to see these types of technologies updated and integrated into phones. You're going to see a lot of wearable technologies. We've talked about wearables for a while. There's a lot of great things that they can do, right? They can track your heartbeat. They can track your steps. They can help you manage your cholesterol. Those are all smart data points. What we were talking about earlier this year is this notion of going from smart to intelligent. When everything starts to connect and you can plug in what you're eating to what you're doing to your medical provider and talking to each other, you start to get all that smart data and actually apply it and make it intelligent to your everyday life. We're seeing a massive pivot into how do you take that one step further, and it's not just helping you, it's helping humanity, right? So Fitbit this morning announced a consortium with a bunch of scientists to leverage Fitbit data and other wearable data to try and figure out how do you take the early markers of COVID-19 to do early diagnostics to ensure people know if they've been near somebody who has come in contact with someone else who has COVID or shows symptoms, and really trying to figure out longer term, how do you leverage smart devices and wearable devices into actionable, intelligent data. And you're going to see that amongst consumers and everyday behaviors as they track their heart rate, ensure their family is healthy, ensure they're safe. These are all things that you can bring into the workplace, and these are all notions that you can bring in. How do you take the data that you have on your patients, not even just the things that you see on a scan, but consumer behaviors of when they come in, the process of how you get them checked in, the process of how they see nurses and doctors and medical providers. How do you look at those types of data points, and even the EQ driven data points and the emotional data points of how you talk to and connect with and communicate with your consumers? And how do you figure out how to bring those data points to expedite and get ahead of it and find a more EQ driven approach, right? An easy win that we're looking at is, if you look at the news right now, even if you love Cuomo and his daily updates, it's a lot of doom and gloom in the world. And not to say that we always lived in the happiest of times, but this is a very rough time for people. They're losing their jobs, they're seeing friends suffer, they're losing family members, they're losing friends. There's a lot of illness, there's a lot of doom and gloom, and there's no hard date of when this is going to end. What we are seeing is an increase in numbers in the content that people are turning to the happy and the fun. Right? There's only so much doom and gloom that you can take. Mental health and wellness requires a bit of happy. So we're seeing a lot of platforms like Instagram. There's a massive spike in accounts like Tank's Good News and platforms like that and sites like that are focused on the everyday little bits of inspiration, like the grandma in New Jersey who put a sign up saying, "I need more beer," and a teen brought them beer because they couldn't socially distance, right? Little random stories like that. The son who's been doing weather reports for his family and videotaping them and playing them on TV in the morning just to brighten the family's day. These little random bright sparks of adorable good news are becoming big. Actor John Krasinski launched a YouTube channel called Good News Network, right? He has 1 point something million YouTube followers now, just for a show he's producing in his home office that is solely based on highlighting individuals throughout the world and just frankly positive good news. So we're seeing a lot of research that people are turning to content that is entertaining, enlightening, funny, just light. It's something to consider when you're doing your brand messaging, right? You do need to be factual, you do need to be concise, but focusing solely on the doom and gloom of every situation is not necessarily the way consumers want to be communicated. They want honesty, they want transparency, they want you to be to the point, but you don't always have to be dark and depressing and highlight only the bad, right? So finding the fun, finding the spark, finding the quirk, thinking about what your brand stands for and who you stand for and what your brand positioning is, trying to find ways of injecting lightheartedness and fun into what you're doing is helpful. And a lot of times that just comes in everyday support, right? So a great example of light everyday support, if you think about everything that's closed, right? All of the theme parks closed, Disney World closed, Universal Studios closed. They aren't going on for a very long time. All the traveling shows that families would go to, Sesame Street Live, Baby Shark Live, all of these things are offline for the foreseeable future. But what you do have is families of all ages, not just those with children, who are home, who need new forms of entertainment, but also they are very cost conscious. They may have lost their jobs, but they may be concerned about their jobs. We're heading into a recession. There's a lot of concern around finances. You're seeing a lot of brands actually launch online versions of things, solely to bring a bit of that magic and a bit of happiness. So Disney launched a brand new site where it's everything from videos of people being on their rides to how to draw your favorite characters to short form videos, and just creating these hubs where parents can turn to for content, people of all ages can turn to for a bit of Disney magic. Warner Brothers did the same thing with Harry Potter. Anyone who is a muggle who wants to consider themselves a bit of magic, you can get into the wizarding world of Harry Potter. There's everything from how-to videos of how to make your own broomstick or Gryffindor socks to videos and how to do things and insider behind the scenes and just bringing a bit of the magic that you may not see. Sesame Street has launched a Alone Together community where it's support for parents, support for caregivers, supports for all ages. They've even done things like launch virtual play dates. Last night they had a show across 5 channels. It's on demand now, called Elmo's Virtual Play Date, which helps explain some of the concepts like EMTs who can't come home to their kids, why they're not there, and making things like the constant Zooming with your friends and only seeing them on FaceTime comfortable. So there's ways of bringing the real life experience into someone's home virtually and finding ways to do it where it's not just doom and gloom of the hospitals are closed and we can't talk to you, versus we're here to bring a little bit of fun and bring that personality and translate through your brand online. So there is a lot of great things going on right now in terms of how you can translate your brand online if it's a physical brand. But again, it comes down to tracking your consumers, asking your consumers how they're feeling, trying to figure out what those scabs versus scars are, which we won't know for months. We won't know until what the new normal is going to be, because the new normal this week is very different than the new normal last week. And we don't know what a month from now will bring, let alone 6 months from now will bring. We don't know what restrictions will be let up. We don't know what behaviors will let up. There's short-term things, obviously, that you're seeing. You're not in your car as much. You're not driving as much. That impacts things like the radio you listen to in the car, places you stop to in the car. You most likely are ordering things online more, even if it wasn't something that you wanted to buy online previously. Again, people who were holdouts for e-commerce are necessarily turning to it because they don't want to go into crowds, right? You're not seeing your friends. You're not going to concerts. Conversely, you're testing new things online. You may be making more phone calls and FaceTimes and video chats with people that you haven't seen. Hopefully you're reaching out and checking in on people more than you are. You're turning to online for the free Grateful Dead stream, where you're looking at all of the concerts that you never saw on YouTube, or you're turning to your favorite artists who are starting to do live streams. You're seeing brands like Pepsi, even they're doing this Saturday night a live concert from around the world, with everyone from athletes to professional singers to celebrities to healthcare workers, to support whose initiatives. And you're seeing these come together in these new virtual events. So those are the types of things that short term it's important to explore. It's important to understand them as a consumer. What do you like about them? What do you feel they're lacking? Where could they deliver? It's important to understand it as a marketer, as a business owner, as a professional, as a doctor, of what are the things that they're delivering on that you miss. If you're someone who used to love going to concerts, I can't promise you can go to Madison Square Garden this fall for your favorite concert. A, the venue may no longer exist. B, your favorite artist may not be touring. C, you may not have the funds or the comfort of being in physically large places like that. But looking at the live streams, whether it's on Instagram Live, whether it's through Live Nation's recently launched platform, understanding what you like about that in-home experience, what translates, what frankly doesn't translate. I think there's a lot that you can learn in what doesn't work, not just what does work, because you feel that discomfort. And as a consumer, as a user of anything, when something doesn't work and you don't like it. But by being able to identify what you don't like, you can solve for it in your own professional realm, right? So you may not love a live stream. Why? Is it because you don't like your at-home setup and consumers are going to make tweaks to their at-home setup or increase the amount of technology in their home? Maybe. Is it that you like the experience of being around physical people? How do you replicate the sounds, the emotion? Is it a laugh track? If you saw Saturday Night Live last week, they did a phenomenal job of trying to replicate a real live experience on your TV, but it was different. Didn't have a live audience. You didn't hear that laughter. Do you need that canned laughter? Do you need that live audience? Do you need that human interaction? Or do you just want the content? Would you prefer not your content to be live and to be heavily edited and beautiful and clean, right? So we're seeing a lot of experimentation across content providers, media providers, brands, frankly. So it's a lot of great opportunities for you as a consumer to try new things, to understand, to figure out what you think the consumer behaviors are for yourself, for your family, for your employees, for your clients, what's going to score and what's going to scab and what's going to be short-term versus long-term, and figure out what do you like, what can you steal with pride, we like to say, and apply to your business now, whether it's online, whether it's offline, whether it's, very, very technological, whether it's voice activated, whether it's frankly picking up the phone and resorting back to cold calling. Is it going back to physical emails? Is it long form content? Is it short form content? Is it trying new platforms like Instagram? Is it asking your kids to teach you TikTok and getting involved in that? What are the things that you should be doing now? And frankly, a lot of it is trial and error. And those who have had digital strategies, now's a great time to double down on that and reflect on what's working and what you could do better. Those who may not be familiar, there's so many resources online. There's so many places like Coursera that are offering courses in so many different facets of digital media and marketing that you could take for free. A lot of the universities have their classes online for free, like Harvard and Yale, where you can take programs. And there's a lot of conversations like this, like CTisus. Look at the brands that you like, the brands that you trust. Most likely they are doing a lot of online content for free for their consumers, and it's something to take advantage of. This is also a phenomenal time to learn, to educate yourself, to try something new. You may have a list of articles that you wanted to read, videos you wanted to watch, courses you wanted to take. This is a great time for a master class in branding and crisis management, because crisis management isn't just the first few weeks of COVID and how do you react and how do you talk to consumers who are losing jobs, losing family members very, very quickly. It's how do you prepare and position yourself for the future. And the future could be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 18 months, 22 months, frankly, because we do not know what the future will bring, but we do know consumer behavior is rapidly changing. And no matter what scabs or scars, there's a lot of expedited movement in terms of consumer behavior, of what the comfort levels are or what they're willing to try. And now is the time to try it as both a brand, as a marketer, as a professional, and as a consumer and as a human, to try these things, to figure out what you like, what you don't like, and sort of isolate those components so that you can apply that to your business.
Okay, I guess that's my signal to come back. Whitney, that was terrific. Let me ask you a couple of questions, and let's see, we move closer so we're both in the screen.
Socially distanced.
Socially distanced, yeah. We're in CTisus as a global audience, and we basically reach about 200 countries. Is this everything you spoke about? Is this somewhat U.S. centric, or you feel, I know you have a global role, do you feel that the same issues are going to be in every country for the most part?
I think everyone has different laws and regulations, which impacts things of how long you'll be on lockdown for and the rules and regulations around businesses. But there's a lot of things that, frankly, were meant to change and will change. So things like global supply chain, right? You're seeing there's a lot of disconnects and issues, global supply chain. So you're going to see things moving closer to home. And that's just not necessarily just about PPE equipment or cars or cell phone parts. It's everything from the way that products are sourced, the way hospitals get their tools, the way that farmers get their food to market. You're going to see a big turn to local community. And that won't change by country. No matter how long you're locked in your home, whether you're in Italy, whether you're in China, whether you're US, turning to the internet and turning to content for entertainment, engagement, social norms, frankly, a babysitter when you need it, online teaching, everybody is going to continue to do that because you don't know what things are going to be. Remote work will continue to grow because, frankly, even if your company says everybody come back tomorrow, there's not going to be a lot of people who are comfortable with the old ways of doing things. For example, I work on an open floor plan, which means all day long, I don't have a firm desk. Every time I have a meeting, I pack up my stuff and I move. If you're afraid to touch a surface and you don't trust that surface because you don't know who sat there before you, that's not going to work. So I don't know what my company, for example, is going to do. And we are in so many different countries. It may be staggered shifting. It may be different shifts of the day. It may be a 50% capacity or less in the actual office. So things like remote work will continue for most industries, especially as people get comfortable with the notion of remote work. There's a lot of aches and pains, as you probably have seen with any sketch or any comedy spoofing a Zoom call. But as securities get tighter, as people get comfortable with remote work, anywhere in the world is going to increasingly move towards that model. So you will see a lot of these behaviors, whether they scar or scab, it doesn't matter what country you're in.
Right. I think so obviously we're in a medical environment. I think it's interesting, and you spoke about this a little bit. Some places had telemedicine. Cities like New York, Seattle had telemedicine. A company called Teladoc on the West Coast. There's a number of different companies, but they seem to be the oddities. And most people would say, well, I'm not going to look at a phone or a computer and deal with my doctor that way. So it was really these little pieces. Now you fast forward literally a couple months, and now everything is telemedicine. Now you could say, well, okay, this will go back to normal when things go back to normal, but I have a feeling that's no longer the case, right? That telemedicine, basically, this is the change moment for telemedicine. And I think people will be doing this. I know we do pancreatic conference. I did it yesterday. All of the patients typically would come to Hopkins. We would scan them, which is the best thing for them. and then they would be evaluated, spoken to, and everything else. Now what happened was we did 7 patients yesterday. Each of them was scanned at their home. Images were sent to us. We read them, and then the cases were discussed, and someone was going to do a conference with the patients later in the day. It's not as good, but in the short term, it surely was as good as you can get. So I think that's one thing, I think. The other thing is, we've done CTisus for 21 years, and it's a big educational resource, but I've also done meetings like Orlando, you guys know, Memphis, Nashville, Las Vegas for 37 years. And meetings had not been, for a number of reasons, a different age crowd, the finances, a number of reasons, meetings had been going down in volume, and that's from the RSNA and any meetings, smaller meetings as well, and many meetings no longer exist. I wonder, no one has any meetings planned. Every meeting you're going to has been canceled. I remember in sometime early March, I had like 10 meetings canceled in a 2-day period. And I just wonder if that's ever going to come back, if the educational method routinely will be this.
Yeah. I think it depends. When people talk about the future, people tend to think that it's all about technology. No consumer wakes up pre-COVID, post-COVID, no consumer wakes up and says, I need to try something new, technology. I need to buy a new technology. I need to buy VR headsets. I need to buy a new smartphone. Consumers look for solutions. So things like telehealth was always a nice to have till recently, right? So we subscribed to One Medical in New York City. There was something nice about if I was too lazy to go to the doctor because I had a weird ache in my hand, I could video them, I could do it. But if I had a fever, I had something else, I'm going to go to a walk-in clinic. I'm going to go physically. It was a nice to have, and it was a nice to have technology. But when consumers are looking for solutions right now, to your point, they are told not to go to a hospital. They're told not to go see someone in person. They are told to do it tele. It's a solution. Consumers are looking for solutions, and the solution happens to already be in your computer, in your phone, in your house, frankly, with telemedicine. So you're going to see a massive uptick of consumers looking for solutions versus technologies. And honestly, it just depends on how that plays out. So there's a lot of, anyone who's been on a Zoom call or tried to do a FaceTime with your family for Easter or Passover, or tried to just do a group chat. There's a lot of learning curve there, but you'll see a lot of these platforms, Zoom is doubling down on security, it's streamlining its tool offerings. You're seeing other platforms like Instagram Live restructure so that you can bring families in on platforms that you're comfortable with. You have things like Facebook Live. Consumers will continue to seek out solutions for the problems that they have. If they find 6 months from now, educational solutions, whether it's colleges, whether it's CME credits, whether it's high school, if they are finding those solutions work and they can adapt to them, they're not going to abandon them for something that is expensive, includes travel, includes things that are out of their comfort zone. That being said, if things like travel becomes more comfortable and there's safe opportunities and CMEs continue to be something that are better delivered in person, people won't abandon those types of programs. You'll always have real-time events. As human nature, we require touch, we require engagement, we require person to person. So it's not a matter of on or offline, it's finding the solution that people are comfortable with. So right now it's sort of solutions that have necessity, but we will get to a point where it's just looking for solutions that make you most comfortable. So whether that's online or offline or in person, or frankly, a hybrid of both, where you may have a CME conference that's in New York and the tri-state area will attend, but someone in California won't get comfortable getting on a plane and will not come. You may find a hybrid of both is actually the longer term solution based on comfort, based on cost, based on efficiency. But again, right now, consumers in any day of the week are looking for solutions. They're not looking for technology. They're not looking for platforms. They're not looking for companies. They're not looking for credits. They're looking for solutions to mundane and major struggles and strifes, and just frankly points of friction in their lives. So whatever that solution is will be where they will migrate to.
Okay. All right. That's fantastic. And I appreciate your time. Any last comments or anything? Any suggestions of what people should be doing?
Washing your hands.
Washing their hands. And I know it is a challenge for everybody. I think one of the things we're trying to do is keep focused, things like this, getting people to think ahead, what's going to happen, and getting beyond the day-to-day. I think one of the things that's probably unhealthy is for you to look at those little charts which show how many people are sick and the numbers. Some people are getting really caught up into looking at those numbers, which is surely unhealthy. It's bad. Hopefully things are turning a corner in the U.S. and worldwide. But So let's see, here is a question regarding telemedicine. What if the CT staff needs a remote support from an expert colleague? Is it possible to share CT scanning monitors? So I'll answer that question. The answer is actually, yes. You need some software. Actually, I know we have Siemens scanners, so I'll just know the Siemens part. But Siemens had these programs for years where you can actually remotely log in and show someone your screen, and they can help you work through it. And some of the new software I saw at RSNA last year very much is that, where someone can log on and see your screen. I know we use that software. If I have a problem on my computer, be it at work or at home, I call up 2Comp, which is our internal IT people, and they'll share my screen with me. When you're doing training from Apple, I've done that, and the Apple person gets on the screen with me and shows me what to do, because talking, as you say, doesn't help much. So,
and you're going to see a lot of companies actually make changes and launch new programs. So anyone who has a at-home router or as a business with at-home routers, Verizon launched a program this week. Usually, your internet doesn't work, your cable box doesn't work. Someone from Verizon comes into your home and fixes it. Nobody wants anybody in their home right now. He barely wanted to take us in when we came here from New York. So Verizon actually launched something this week where it's a new app where somebody will actually come to your home and stand outside their home with the Verizon truck and all the tools needed. And it's a live app, and it can utilize video, it can utilize photographs, and you can walk a technician through what's going on. You can take video, you can take photos, you can talk to them and text them and video chat with them and show them the problem of what's going on. And the technician can actually walk you through trying to fix it, down to taking the photos that you send and drawing on it on their phone and tablet and sending it back to you and walking you through the steps of what you need to fix your router, your internet, your cable box without having to come into your home, but is on site in case there actually is physical maintenance needed. So you may see that a lot of companies launching their own versions of solutions like Siemens in the coming weeks and months.
Okay. All right. Well, anyone has any questions that they could think of, you could ask us later and we'll try to get back to you. If not, Whitney, I appreciate you traveling all the way to join us and risk social non-distancing. And I appreciate the audience being here. And we'll be back actually with CTisus Facebook Live tomorrow. I'm speaking, but about changes as well. I'm going to build on what Whitney said and really focus a little bit on how we see radiology changing. And with that, have a great day and see you soon.